I see people waiting. Gonna let them in soon, guys. 1 minute. Hi everyone. For those who are here already, thank you so much. We're just gonna give it a couple of minutes before we start. I think we're having a bit of a technical issue with our link, so be patient. We'll start in like maybe 2, 3 minutes. So just enjoy the music and we'll start soon. We don't speak when the man's home. We don't speak when the man's gone. We don't speak if we single. No, we don't speak. No, we don't speak. Yo, we got beef in this bad blood. Paint these streets with a bad brush. Shall we meet is an ambush? Way down deep is Hi everyone, welcome to our session today. Um, Sorry for the technical issues for those of you who reached out. Thank you so much for that. I'm glad you got the correct link. So to everyone is here, thank you so much for being here. Um, we're gonna start our session today with a quick poll. So we're gonna launch a poll right now, and it's gonna show up on your screen. And it would be great if you could just spend like 1 minute to answer the questions provided, and that's it. That's all you have to do to start today's session. A poll should be popping up right now. I hope the questions are not too difficult. Ooh, lovely. All right, looks like there's a lot of us here who are actually managing or marketing to Generation Z, which is awesome. And there are some of us who used to or am about to begin this journey. Um, so far, everyone thinks that knowing your audience is essential to any marketing strategy. We're very happy to hear that because that's exactly what a marketer would think like. Um, okay, so Generation Z is changing the face of marketing and the future of work. Some of us definitely agree to all of that. And well, do you hope to learn something new today? It looks like everyone wants to know everything about Generation Z. So awesome. Thank you so much for taking time to answer the poll. We'll carry on now to. You should be able to see results. So, hello and welcome everyone to our mindfulness knowledge sharing session today, organized by Karma Marketing. If you don't know me, my name is Rachel Lai, and I'm the host today, as well as the founder of Karma Marketing, which is a not for profit initiative by Wavemakers, a regional marketing agency that is based between Bali and Kuala Lumpur. I'm really happy to see all of you who are joining us from different parts of the world today. So, if you would like to use the chat box feature to introduce yourselves and tell me where you're currently calling in from, that would be amazing. And, just kind of get warm and casual and get to know each other via the chat box. I just want to thank you for being with us on a Friday evening. And for the next 1.5 hours, we're definitely going to have some interesting conversations. And we've got like a line of slides that are presented by our amazing speakers today. And I can't wait to introduce you to them. So before we begin, I just want to share a little bit of a housekeeping rules. I just want to make sure that everyone keeps your audio mute at all the times. And if you want, you can keep your cameras on because, it gets pretty lonely out here and it'll be nice to see all your faces. And our admin person is just going to paste the rest of the rules so that you can kind of, you know, be on the same page with everyone. I think more importantly, I'd love for us to all just get involved. This is a very casual session, and the main purpose is for us to learn something new today, which is why we're here. So we've actually started to record this session. So just to let you know that post event, you can actually access this recording. And if you feel like spreading the good word and tagging us on socials, you can kind of, do that just to, help us put the word out. And yeah, that's it. So without further ado, let us begin our knowledge sharing session today. And I'll start with next, what you can expect today. So the agenda today is really straightforward. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to what the heck karma marketing is and why we're here and why you're here. And then we'll carry on with the first session with speaker one, which is Javier from Gosu Academy. He's actually calling in from Bangkok, Thailand today, which is awesome. And then he'll have 15-20 minutes to do his session, and then we'll move on to the second speaker, which is Charmaine Wong, who's representing Cult Creative. She's actually Malaysian, but she's calling in from Singapore today. And our third speaker is Jamia or Jamie. She's actually a podcast creator for Gen Z Marketer, and she'll be telling us a little bit more about the e-commerce industry, which is really cool. And plus, she's the Gen Z person herself. And last but not least, we're going to do a quick Q&A. So if you got questions, thoughts along this session, put them in a chat and ideally address them to the person that you want to speak to, and we'll take it from there at the end of the session. And we hope to wrap up by 5:30 today, or it might even end sooner depending on how it goes. So next. So I'm going to start by introducing karma marketing and what we're about, and also so that you get to know who's been the one that's been reaching out to you. As I mentioned at the start, we're a non-for-profit initiative, and we're actually powered by Wavemakers, which is a marketing agency that's been running for 6 years. And in quite simply, if I were to tell you what it is, it's basically a union between two concepts. One, karma yoga, which is the meaning is discipline of unselfish action. And the second thing is marketing, which means the activity for creating and exchanging offerings that have value for society. Our organization was transpired through the teachings of yoga. We are actually experimenting with the possibility of bridging the world of yoga and marketing. With both school thoughts combined, we hope to empower our community through two ways. One is holistic development, whereby whatever you're experiencing right now is essentially a safe and nurturing digital space. And whether you're here to learn something new or to connect with other people from the same industry or from a different industry, this is basically the purpose of why we're here. The second thing is this concept called circular kindness. And what it is to basically for us to begin to move intentionally and to realize that there is possibilities for us to actually do acts of service that are selfless, which means noticing how we can be of service to others without expecting anything in return. And that's where we basically practice unselfish actions. So All in all, the purpose of this webinar is for us to share and learn from each other. And what a mindfulness knowledge sharing session is a gathering of the present moment while observing today. So my question is, what kind of actions are you going to take after today's session? This is entirely up to you to explore and discover. Next. Next. So, why are we here today? Topic of today is interesting. It's basically creatively managing and marketing to Generation D, as DZ. So while businesses have given a lot of attention to understanding the millennial audience, marketing professionals are beginning to target audiences who were born after 1996, otherwise known as the Generation Z. So if you notice, there's like a lot of attention on Gen Z, whether by the media or even by marketing agencies and just brands and businesses as a whole. And there's not a day that goes by without like a survey, a poll, or a report, or an analysis that's trying to tell us what we need to know about this generation. Why do you think that's happening? Well, besides the fact that people love youth and Gen Zers, the reason why we're interested in this generation is because they are basically the shapers of culture. And we call them the next generation because they are the ones that were born prior to, I mean, some of us here may be from the Gen Zs, but they are the ones that is basically going to dictate the market and the future of work. Um, Societies before time have always been cherishing the young, the hip, and the attractive. And that is essentially what the Gen Zs are for us right now. What we want to know is to basically understand how brands can leverage on this generation to sell products as well as to drive trends. But marketing to this generation is really not easy. And so this is why we wanted to introduce the topic of Generation Z and why it matters for us marketers. So you can basically perceive them as the new cohort in the scene, and you got to ask yourself, how do we basically engage with them, whether at work or in the marketplace? Next. So, Generation Z, as we know, there are several terminologies that goes into who they are. There is Generation Me, there's Generation We, there's Generation Selfie, there's Generation Gratification, Generation Reality TV, and Generation Genuine Self. But ultimately, they are also known as the Centennials, aka the youngest cohort of the present. They are mobile first generation and are defined by diversity, and they're always present in technology, social media drivers, and basically highly connected 24/7 to information cycles. You can take a look at the chart on the right to basically understand where they're at within a comparison of baby boomers, Gen X, and the millennials. So us as marketers, we really believe that there's an important part that we need to understand how we can communicate to them, right? So we've done a couple of research, and there's like a couple of behavioral needs that we need to understand when it comes to marketing or managing them. Gen Zers are currently influencing how the general population receive their news. So 63%, according to new Edelman report, says that their mobile first habits makes them digitally intuitive and in constant need of digitally engaging experiences. So you yourself as a brand or a business, you need to ask yourself, like, how do I establish a share of voice in their lives? And how do I continue to follow them wherever they're going and to authentically communicate with them at all times in a digital world? They are highly influenced by individuals that reflect their backgrounds, their passions, their interests, and basically they're interested to collaborate with brands that are addressing issues that include racism, climate change, and gender inequality. So you as a brand or business owner, you got to ask yourself, how do I elevate the right Gen Z ambassadors and hopefully try to increase my credibility to the right audience? As we know, Gen Z is leading the charge with deep reliance on brands as their partners in change across the landscape of workplace, social interaction, and leisure. And the question is, what would a marketer do with this information? And this is why we're all here today. We have like three speakers who are basically going to tap into the gaming, the tech, and the e-commerce industry and give us a little bit of insight of how they've experienced this generation on ground. And what we need to know is that Gen Zers, they can sense insincerity from a whiff, like from a distance. And what that means is if you're not honest or authentic in how you communicate with them, then it's going to be a problem and you lose interest right away. So we need to figure out how to establish authenticity as the foundation to all marketing efforts, and this includes workplace culture. So here at Kamar Marketing, what we're trying to do is basically shape the future of marketing, and hopefully with a marketer's perspective, you can basically figure out how we can establish authentic relationships. So with our three sages today, next, I'm going to now introduce the first speaker, which is Javier Bernal. He is basically currently in, as I mentioned, Bangkok, Thailand, and I'm very excited because he'll take us a journey into the world of gaming. And we know gaming is such a Gen Z thing. And so he's the co founder and chief strategy officer at Gosu Academy. He'll be sharing his experience on how brands can revamp themselves to appeal to Gen Zs as a consideration, as well as how other esport brands could possibly market to the Zoomer generation. But I'm going to basically let him introduce himself and maybe tell us a little bit what you're doing at Gosu Academy. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you very much, Rachel, Nina, and Kara Marketing. It's an honor for me to be here today. And yeah, I mean, thank you very much for counting with me. So just to tell you a bit more about myself, well, as Rachel mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Gosu Academy. It's basically what we do. It's an online platform that provides training services for gamers who want to improve their skills in the video game. In any video game like League of Legends, Valorant, Counter-Strike, Fortnite, and others. Regarding my background, actually, I mean, I'm Spanish. My background is basically in strategy. I was a strategy consultant working for Deloitte for the first 4 years of my life, of my working life. Since then, I mean, I was basically helping big multinationals and big and CEOs to actually do their strat plans in many different industries, from banking to hotels to supermarkets in many different regions of the world. So I basically lived and worked in many countries in Europe, in the US, and then I ended up in Singapore, where when I was 26, became the head of strategy for Radisson Hotels. And after that, I moved to Thailand, met my amazing business partner, Braden Plain, who has been in the gaming industry for all his life. He wanted to become a pro player, and he saw the need of actually having a proper education in digital sports, in electronic sports, in this. So, and he just basically made me fall in love with the industry. So, if we can go to the next slide, please, Nina. Next. So here, Rachel, I would like to make you a question. Which do you think is currently the choice of entertainment activity for the Generation Zers? What do you think?
From what I've observed, they love gaming, whether it's on their mobiles or on their laptops. They kind of put on their headphones and go to this whole other world. At least I see that in my younger brother and sister. Am I right?
You're actually right. If you go to the next slide, it's actually by far. So basically, I mean, in orange you have the Gen Z, and then the rest of blue millennials actually playing video games. It's by far the activity of choice for Gen Zers to entertain themselves, and even it's also actually as well for millennials. Actually, just to make you see how video game industry is, if we go to the next slide, the gaming industry has become the global leader of entertainment, even more over music and the cinema industries. Actually, if you go to the next slide, sorry, I mean, I have a lot of slides. Well, just to the one previous, sorry. Just to give you some stats on this, just in 2020, the gaming industry was generating $160 billion in 2020. That was basically 60% more than the whole cinema industry. I mean, including Netflix, including, I mean, all the cinema, you know, and actually more than double than what it is the US sports industry. So you can imagine how huge it is. And this is not stopping. I mean, it's growing at gigantic steps. I mean, you know, with the metaverse and everything, you can imagine how big gaming is becoming. And the reason why it's also because of Gen Zers. At the end, they're becoming older and older, and then they're used to play video games. So I mean, that's quite a normal. So just going to the next slide. Here's a bit of what we do in Ghost Tree Academy. I mean, when we started Ghost Tree Academy, what we saw is that, I mean, the gaming industry, there was a lack of education, while in looking at physical sports like football and basketball, you have an education structure. Like you play, I mean, you learn how to play football in schools, in clubs, in you know, there's a basically structure. In video games, that it's so new, there's nothing like that. And that's basically one of the needs that we saw and that we tried to solve. The second thing, it's basically that we saw this huge talented pool of talents. There's a lot of gamers, a lot of coaches that actually would love to actually dedicate their lives on teaching others how to play video games, but they just don't have the structure, they don't have the platform. So that's where we want to focus in. And the last thing is our platform focuses in different languages. So most of our competitors just focus in English, while since the very beginning we started in English, Spanish, now entering into Korean, and sooner than later in the rest of Southeast Asia. So I'll keep you posted on that. So going to the next slide. This is just to show you which is the mission and vision, which is just to, I mean, to give the best quality of education for anybody who wants to become a competitive, I mean, wants to improve their skills at a competitive video game. And our vision in the long term, which doesn't include only gamers, but also, as I said before, coaches. We want to give opportunity to anyone who wants to have wants to educate in this industry, right? So to be the platform of choice for anyone who wants to teach or learn a competitive video game. So going to the next slide, please. Next slide, better. And just to show you, I mean, what we do is we give it's just education programs, but using a specific methodology. At the end, you know, most of our competitors use video courses, or you know, when right now a gamer wants to learn how to play video games, they just go to YouTube, right? And you know, watching videos, it's like trying to learn how to swim with a book. I mean, you need to actually have active learning, somebody who is there teaching you, right? And that's why what we highlight with active education, we focus on active education, we focus on accountability, and what is more important, it's something that I will touch later on, is in community. For Gen Zers, community aspect is key. And that's something that since we started with Ghost Tree Academy, that's something that I mean, it's amazing when you actually tackle on the community aspect. I mean, the Gen Zers like this feel of belonging. So I'll explain it a bit later. Going to the next slide. And then just some examples. I mean, for those, I saw that there's somebody also here that that it's in gaming. Maybe you know some of these big names. We actually work with these big content creators, these big influencers in the gaming industry. So just to show you a bit of what we're doing. So next slide, and then I start with the first question. Thank you for the patience with the introduction of Ghost Tree Academy. So how to continually sustain a brand that resonates with Gen Z. So next slide. I mean, I couldn't agree more with the definition that Rachel gave before, but there's three things that I want to highlight. Number one, that Gen Z is the generation better informed, or in a way misinformed way that has ever existed. They're curious by nature. I mean, with guys, I mean, they've had the smartphone since they were actually not born, but I mean, since they were kids. I mean, I got my first smartphone, which was a BlackBerry, when I was 18 years old. So, it's a completely different story. So if you want to actually have a brand that resonates within Gen Z, I mean, you need to be authentic, because I mean, with just one click, they can know everything. So that's number one. Second thing, attention span of about 8 seconds. There's a lot of people actually that actually criticize that from this generation. For me, it's actually the other way around. I mean, they are so used to this much information that they just have developed a filter. I mean, in 8 seconds, they know what they want, what they don't want. So you just need to know how to get their attention. But I mean, they just have this better filter than myself, than I'm a millennial, or than my parents, or so on. And then the last thing is diversity. I mean, it's the most diverse generation that has ever existed in history. So going to the next slide. Here's some overall suggestions to continue to sustain your brand. Number one, which is something that it's quite well known by all. I mean, it's influencer marketing, and that's something we see a lot in gaming. And that's how we basically do our marketing, sustain our brands. Getting the best influencers inside the industry on each game actually makes our brand resonate better. At the end, we just going against the community aspect. You tackle to the community of those influencers. And or Gen Zers, they trust their influencers. They are the idols. So at the end, I mean, if their influencers actually trust you, you already have a big community. And then also just going to the mass. I mean, the return investment of just a blog post alone, not even including promotion, is 11 times higher than a banner ad after 12 months. Then the second thing, importance of community. So, and here, Rachel, I would say that you may have missed 2 social apps in actually your chart before, which are more gaming apps, but that little by little, they are becoming even more important in the rest of the industries, which are Discord and Twitch. So basically, research says that 65% of Gen Z feel more confident online with community-focused social apps, which is basically what Discord and Twitch does. Actually, this research, showed that 70% join a community just for the feeling of belonging. So at the end, brands here, it gets to a point that you just not need to show them that, hey, I just want you to buy my products. You need to make them feel they belong to your brand, and by creating these communities, that's how you get it. So keynote, how to use better Twitch and how to use better Discord. Like, they are very key, and they are growing more and more every day, not only for gaming but also for the rest of the industries. Then the third point, educate your audience about your products. I mean, this is absolutely key. This is something we've seen before. I mean, that's something we're doing with us in Ghost Academy. I mean, with some of our sponsors, we actually include polls, we include rewards, where we actually, I mean, you just don't throw a logo somewhere, right? That just makes everybody knows your logo, but I mean, they don't know what you're doing. So for instance, if you want to launch a new product, you need to actually make your audience know specifically what these are doing. So, and that's why as well, I mean, with this education linked to community, it's key, because with a community, you can educate better. Then next 2 things, which goes again to these 8 seconds that you have to actually get their attention. So emphasize eye-catching visual content. Gen Z is more video focused. So, be creative with that. And then experiment with interactive content. Try to mix creativity and interactivity. Gen Z want to do something. They want to type, swipe, click. So just play with that. And then a last thing that I want to highlight is, tap on their fear of missing out. And that's something that I don't think it's new for all of us. I think it's quite normal. But I mean, for specifically for us, let's say we launch a bootcamp in Counter-Strike. We usually do it in 6 weeks. So most of our sales are basically during the last week. We do a specific a specific ads that says you only have 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, and you would never imagine the amount of sales we get. So tap into that. And then last thing, which is also, I mean, it's absolutely key. And going back to what Rachel said, amplify your brand's beliefs and values. And when I mean amplify, I also mean that you actually not just need to say that you're doing something, actually do it. You need authenticity. I mean, as we said before, with only one click, they can know everything you're doing. So just do it, right? Yeah, but that's everything for this slide. Maybe I was too long in this slide. I'll try to go. This is just to highlight the importance of Twitch and Discord. These are these two social apps that they don't stop growing, and it's actually, I mean, you will see it in the following years. So important. These two. So it's not only for gaming; it's for the rest of the industry. So just have a look at them because it's the next big thing. Next slide. How many minutes do I have, Rachel? I think I'm speaking a lot.
Considerate of you. We're actually like you can wrap up in a couple of minutes, perhaps. And I think this part is important because you talk about like how it is working with a, you know.
Okay, perfect. So, well, actually, I mean, well, this is Braden Plain. He's the co-founder and CEO of Ghost Academy. I couldn't be more blessed on having someone in like Braden in my team. Apart from being the most intelligent guy that I've ever met, the fact of being in Gen Z makes everything different. For anybody, I mean, for all of you guys, if you're if you're leaders of your company, I would definitely suggest you to have somebody in Gen Z within the board. It's absolutely key. I mean, if you want to go to that community, you just need to have somebody who thinks like them. I mean, you can, I mean, it's just the way it is. And that's something that it's not new. I mean, actually, I mean, I was the youngest in the executive committee of Radisson Hotels in Asia Pacific. And they wanted me as well because I was a millennial. Right? I mean, you are a millennial, so they want to get how to get into millennials. So the same thing with Gen Z. And me having Braden, it's a game changer, a complete game changer, because he knows how to, you know, direct messages better to the Gen Z. And then I don't know if I have enough time for the last points. I think that we actually maybe Shermin and Jamie actually tackle on these points later. So maybe
Sure. You want to let them tackle the topic for you?
I mean, I can speak about it, but I just don't want to take time
No
from
worries.
the.
Like maybe you can wrap up in 1 minute, and then we'll pass it over to Charmaine. Okay?
That sounds great. So I will just focus I will just focus on on how manage a Gen Z audience. There's four, and I will do it in contraposition to millennials. I mean, as I'm a millennial, I feel very identified with this. Number one, millennial prioritize job flexibility, while Gen Z job stability, and this kind of makes sense. At the end, Gen Z has entered into they started working just when big uncertainty and with COVID when COVID arrived. So I mean that's actually what happens. Then second thing, millennials value more work-life balance, while Gen Z values salaries and career advancement. And this makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, for millennials, I mean, the trend was when Google, Facebook, Spotify had all these work-life balance strategies, which, you know, millennials we absolutely love. But Gen Z right now focus more on this salary and career advancement. The last 2 points. So millennials prefer encouraging feedback, so more positive feedback, while Gen Zers prefer the straightforward feedback. What do you call the way it is, right? And then the last thing, which is also important, how you communicate. Communication. It's a key thing in everything we do in life, especially when you manage people. that millennials respond more to written and visual communication, while Gen Zers respond best to short form video communication. So these are just my suggestions. I have one more slide, but I think we can just skip it and give the word to Sherman. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful session, Javier. I mean, I think a lot of us might have questions about the gaming industry, and Twitch and Discord is definitely something that I hoped you would have brought into this conversation. So thank you for that. So next up, let's give a very warm virtual welcome to Malaysia's creative trailblazer, Shermaine Wong. She is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Cult Creative, and they're based in Malaysia. And today she'll be sharing her insights on what Gen Zs look for in their employers, as well as how Cult Creative markets to Gen Zs in particular. So, welcome, Shermaine. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Rachel. Funnily, I was actually in a cafe in Singapore and I was sitting next to the Harper's Bazaar team. I recognized them because I used to work in Harper's Bazaar and they were meeting a client. I could recognize they were talking about Kate Spade, and they actually invited their Gen Z creative team to actually brainstorm on the creative direction, consumer trends. So it was very refreshing to actually see that, because I remember in my generation, my superiors never asked for my opinion. You know what I mean? Like it was always like, no, it's my way or the highway, you know. So it was very refreshing to see the client and the seniors, and also listening to Gen Z. It was very respectful. So yeah, so I think brands are definitely looking into Gen Z. They are the consumer. So listening to them, treating them like soundboards, forecasting trends, whatever you said just now was spot on. Okay, next. All right, so today I'll be talking about this. Okay, next. A little bit about myself. I am a PR graduate from RMIT, and then I went on to work for a bunch of boutique PR agencies. I was very passionate about boutique style because I learned that I didn't want to work in bigger agencies because it was a lot more learning opportunities, and I knew that I couldn't get that on working with Ogilvy and all these big agencies. So I was very intentional to work with PR agencies that are boutique. And then I went on to become a sales manager for Harper's Bazaar. Soon later, I realized that I was quite burnt out, and I felt that my work wasn't truly mine, even though I put in a lot of work, and it always belonged to a client. Soon after, I launched my own event agency called Tish. It was around for 5 years. We were servicing clients like Nestle, Disney, Adidas, Longchamp during the peak of everything. But 2020 came, the pandemic came, and unfortunately, everybody decided to cancel events. Long story short, I had to retrench my team and all the freelancers that I used to work with. So very disappointing. So you can see it's a massive drop. That's COVID right there. But it sort of gave me a new sense of purpose, right? I realized that people were still coming to me and say, hey, Shermaine, I need to find work. Hey, Shermaine, where can I get jobs? And I realized that I can't be the only one that it's still word of mouth. Is ridiculous, right? This industry. And at the same time, people were still, people couldn't find creative people on LinkedIn. So long story short, I started Cult Creative. Cult Creative is a network platform that matches creative professionals in graphic design, marketing, social media, and copywriting. These are all the industries that I work with very closely, and I match them directly to brands. And also my next phase is actually building for the Gen Z, right? They are the collaboration generation. They are freelancing, they are working together. So it's also not just connecting with creative to employers, but also creative to creative as well. So next, a little bit about us. What Cult Creative does is, number one, you use your portfolio as a profile. So the profile section allows you to link your Behance, Instagram. So these are all important tagging tools that employers need to see, right? Your creative work. You don't see that on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not for creative people. It's all white collar professionals. You use the same profile to apply for jobs, and then you grow your network. So the network feature is very cool. People are also looking for collaborators, like, oh, okay, if I'm a stylist, I'm looking for photographers. So you can type out photographer Penang if you're based in Penang. So that's a quite cool function that we have. And then our favorite part is the community page. We have a very active community that is always very empowering and always looking out for each other. We just had someone shared that he had been burned by his client. He's a new freelancer, but the client refused to pay him. So that the community is always there to like, hey, this is what you should do. Charge late payment fees, charge. So it's a very positive and empowering space that we want to keep cultivating. So Javier talked about community. This is the new way of marketing, is building network effects, is building community, and that's how you spread your message. Next. All right, a little bit about our network. So 72.5% are 18 to 34-year-olds. Majority of them are Gen Z, so we know them well. What is important to them is the 3 Ps, I call them. It's called passion, purpose, and paycheck. Okay, this is what is important to them. They want freedom in expression, freedom in flexibility, and freedom in financial sustainability. So just a little pie chart there. So 40% of them want enjoyment and self-fulfillment. They value that for sure. Javier mentioned just now, work-life balance is also very crucial for them. Financial stability, they definitely value it more than millennials, and also opportunities for promotion and learning. Okay, next. All right, this is the fun part. I'll try my best to answer as fast as I can, or share as fast as I can. Next. So what we realized is important. Oh, I think we skipped a few slides. So with Cult Creative, right, what we really want to do is when we work with employers, we want them to ultimately create a meaningful and motivating work environment for creatives, create a greater sense of purpose, community within companies, and also introduce a culture of curious, collaborative, and creative. So what do Gen Zs want? Greater flexibility and freedom. This is, in a sense, we all know that they want to work from home. These are some of the generic stuff we talk about. But what is more important to them is not just flexibility in where you work, but who you work with and what you work on. So I think to them, they want to know that, and they are way more fluid than millennials. They are multidisciplinary. So they are a lot more hybrid than us. They want to know that I'm going to be working on a social media campaign in the first 3 months. After that, I want to try to dabble into copywriting a bit. So they want to feel that sense of flexibility in moving around the organization. So think about not just where they're working, but who they're working with and what they're working on. Be seen and valued, number 2, is very important because this generation is all about listen to me, hear my thoughts, affirmation, it's always about that. So what employers especially need to think about is this thing called psychological safety. And what that means is allowing your employees, your Gen Z employees, to speak up, share their ideas, and so that there's a space for innovation to thrive and also ultimately create this sense of inclusion. They're all about feeling inclusive, together, listen to me. So back then, all this stuff about I was brought up in a generation with don't come to me with problems, only solutions. It doesn't work that way with this generation. It's a lot about, let's brainstorm about this. What do you think? If you say, for example, if there's a scenario and you want them to come with you with solutions, this is how you ask them. You ask them like, hey, so I'm put in this situation. What do you think I should do as a consumer, as a boss? Or you should actually, they love when you can banter with them and sort of bounce ideas with them. So that's how they feel seen and valued. Okay, next. Oh, wait, one more. Oh, sorry, before that. One thing that's important for Gen Z is upward feedback. Back then, it used to be down the line feedback. So a lot of employers now that we speak to, we tell them that, hey, have a feedback box, have a box that you can drop, anonymity sort of feedback about how a company should be run. Have this thing called self-learning hour, have anything that, improves the quality of work and life. So these are some of the things that you can try. Learning opportunities is important because we realize that a lot of them are a lot more entrepreneurial and diverse. So beyond just giving a salary, think about the sort of career mobility and mentorship that you can provide them. So what we do at Cult Creative is we have this thing called self-learning hour. We impose on the team. They get to block out 2 hours of their time every week, and they block it, and it's in the shared calendar. And we know that we can't kacau them, we can't disturb them during that time, because they will say that, oh, I'm going to learn about digital marketing skills, I'm going to learn about lead gen to improve themselves. So you kind of encourage them to take that time to improve themselves. And every once a month, we have a town hall that everyone shares what they learned, and they can actually, it's a whole sharing session. So it's very community based again. Fourth one is very important. So just now, I think Rachel and Javier also mentioned being authentic, transparency. They can sniff out if you're lying. So transparency is what attracts Gen Z. They want to feel that you are authentic, your mission and purpose aligns with the work that you do, the people that you hire. It kind of has to be cohesive and it flows through. They are definitely allergic to the traditional old school bullshit that we were used to. So they definitely can sniff out all that stuff. So being authentic is so important. Next. All right. So marketing to Gen Z, this is how in terms of marketing Gen Z, I will come in an angle of how do you attract Gen Z talent. Okay. But it also makes sense with what Javier mentioned just now about being authentic, the brand experience. So next slide. So I want to start off with this. How do you attract Gen Z, not just as an employee, but also as a consumer, is really being authentic and humanizing the brand's experience and making all the interaction with them meaningful, relevant, and also just thinking about the quality of their quality of work and quality of life. If you are intentional with that, you will definitely attract the right talent as well. And also, I realize with our data, Gen Zs prefer to work with brands or industries that resonate with their current consumer lifestyle. So if it's about manufacturing, they'll be like, no, that's not for me. But if you can sort of humanize chip making as a way that will affect their livelihoods, then maybe they will be attracted. So think about in their point of view. Okay, next. Okay, this is very important. We tell this to a lot of our employers. For example, when we were working with StoreHub, right? StoreHub was paying their intern 1,500 to 2,000, very high salary, but their job description and their company values were not clear. And then we realized that as compared to, I'm just dropping names here because it's a small group. Nestle's internship was 500 ringgit, 500 to 1,002. Sorry, give me 1 minute. I just need to bring my here, right? Value alignment is so important. So going back to employer branding, you need to be very clear with your values. So for example, Cult Creative, right? When we started out, we set the intention of the cult first. So what are we? Five ways with the values, right? So we talked about collaborativeness, connect, the 5 C's, collaboration, creativity, connection, what else? It was 5 C's, okay? So when we sort of set that out, we also thought about the type of people we're going to hire. Beyond thinking about the people we're going to hire, we also thought about the community itself. We wanted the right energy attracts the right tribe, right? You know that saying, right? So that actually resonated with, not just attracting the right employees, because the right employees will eventually become your brand ambassadors as well. So having them become brand ambassadors attract also the right community that comes with it. So next is being authentic and ensuring your employer branding speaks to the company's output. Like I mentioned just now, you need to also really spend time and effort to really be clear with your mission and purpose. I think Rach or Javier mentioned just now that a lot of the Gen Z right now is a lot about activism, right? Is it fair wage? Is it, representation, racism, all that. So you need to make sure that all these things that you do for your company, it resonates with them. Diversity values, all these things are very important because this generation is all about being true to themselves. They will call you out if you're bullshitting. So I dropped the last thing here again. So the talent right now, they are not like last time. They won't wait around for the opportunity to come because to them, they can find opportunity. They are so fluid and multidisciplinary that they are willing to try different things. So the old paradigm of pay your dues does not work anymore. Okay, next. Okay, I will not spend too long on this, but you guys know what I mean. Pay fairly. Being transparent is very important. So right now at the cult, what we practice, as compared to other job sites like LinkedIn, we make sure that the employers actually put down the price they are willing to pay for the talent. What we also want to practice is fair wage, right? So we actually do not accept unpaid internship. You'd be surprised that people are still not paying interns, but we totally do not advocate that. So we have even employers telling us like, hey, I'm paying for the transport, I'm paying for the food. That's enough. And I'm like, no. That's not enough in this world. So we don't actually accept employers like that. So we also tell them that it's very simple, right? You pay peanuts, you get peanuts, right? So you want to also think about the fair wage, the quality of work that you're paying out. And I mean, I also understand as an employer, some of you are tight like a startup. So if money isn't everything, maybe Gen Zs are willing to take a lower salary in exchange for, career mobility. If you can show them progression in their next 6 months, if you do this well, this is the next case that you get. This is the career ladder that you'll be moving towards. This is the project that you're passionate about that you can take on, and I'm willing to try that with you. So think about that, and definitely pay fairly. Next. All right, so I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more, and I don't want to talk about being in a remote hybrid work environment. I think that's a bit overdone. We all know that the future of work is hybrid. We all know that in a sense that people get to do deep work at home, right? So what we do at the Cult on Friday, we actually have no meetings Friday, and that has proven to be very productive for the team. We realize that when we do that, we also show that we respect their rest. So as soon as they go into Friday, they have no meetings, they do deep work, and they can go and rest on for the weekend and come back fresh on Monday. So these are the sort of flexibility beyond being for a hybrid workplace. And we sort of do Wednesday, Thursday at the office for all the brainstorms and ideation. Okay, so in terms of flexible employment here, I'm talking about is mostly about not just where you work, but what are you working on and who you're working with. So again, they are very fluid and they have a lot of choices. Choices are everywhere. Javier mentioned, you can go on Twitch and you can go on Discord. You suddenly have a lot of opportunities or projects that you want to try on. So they have a lot of options to choose. Second is, to give them that sort of, to recognize them and make them feel seen and valued, you actually have to satisfy their need for creative freedom. So think about the right parameters that you want to set for them. This is meaning like the KPIs, the timelines. I know it sounds so generic and boring, but it is giving them boundaries actually allows people to flourish more than giving them a blank canvas. So, and if you actually set the right boundaries and give Gen Zs the right objective and where you want to get towards, they can actually give you the solution and their method of getting there. So imposing the right parameters can leverage their talent. Finally, providing recognition and opportunities for employees to work on personal goals. To me, trust is a two-way street. If you want to give flexibility to your employee, you also have to think about what are they doing to prove that they respect and that trust you give them. So again, going back to setting these sort of clear boundaries, parameters, and also just KPIs on what happens after this is done and what are the sort of projects you can work on next and how you can feel recognized and valued. All right, done. Next. Okay, I'm going to wrap up my session, and again, apologies for the interruption, but I want to leave you guys with this note, this tweet from actually Adam Grant. He is an organizational psychologist and author. He states here that a company isn't a family. Parents don't fire their kids for low performance and furlough during hard times. I dropped this here because I grew up in I worked in a time where they're always like, oh, we're family, we're like together. It's not true anymore. You want to sort of show that a workplace is a community, and you want to show that it's a place where people bond over shared values, a shared mission, and they are valued as human beings, right? And I think this is why I wanted to work with karma marketing so much, because it's all about, that authenticity in life and respectfulness and valuing one another. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you so much. That's from me. Next slide.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rach and Javier and Nina. And I'm looking forward to the next speaker. Apologies again. If you haven't downloaded the Cult Creative app, this is the QR code. I'm just going to leave it here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that insightful session, Charmaine. And no worries on that pause. If anyone wants to learn more about workplace culture, processes, and policies, do reach out to Charmaine because she's definitely got a lot of creative ideas on how to manage your Gen Z community. So moving on to our last but not least speaker, I am very pleased to introduce Jamia Umali, or otherwise she's more comfortable with Jamie. She is basically the brand builder and consultant of Gen Z marketer from Philippines, and she's actually calling in from Manila right now. And today she's actually going to give us some sort of insights into how social media affects Gen Z buying behavior, and she's going to provide us with some tips on how e-commerce businesses can basically market to the Gen Z people. So thank you so much, Jamie. Take it away.
Yes, thank you for that, Rachel. So, good afternoon again, everyone. I hope you guys are still all right. So, I'll try to keep this short and sweet. So, next slide, please. Yeah, just a brief about myself. I'm from the Philippines. I have a master's in integrated marketing communication, and I actually throughout my career I specialize in branding and marketing for e-commerce. So I've also worked in different industries, mostly fashion at first, but now I have enough experience in F&B, FMCG, travel, and I actually used to work in the local e-commerce landscape, at least in the Philippines. So I've been exposed to Shopee, Lazada, even brand.com. So basically, local marketplaces. And now my career is mostly on Amazon. So it's still e-commerce, but I've been exposed to diverse platforms and markets. And last, as I mentioned, I'm also the host of the Gen Z Marketer podcast. So just a brief about that. Next slide. I'm not sure if it shows up. Oh no, it doesn't show up. But anyway, the Gen Z Marketer podcast, it's on Spotify. Basically, I came up with the show because as a Gen Z myself, so yeah, I'm from Gen Z. I realized that most of the industry insights that I usually listen to on Spotify, like I listen to a couple of marketing podcasts. Most of them are for like let's say for millennials or older generations. And basically most of the insights they share are not exactly what I'm looking for sometimes. So that's why I came up with the show. So yeah, and as I said, I'm Gen Z. I'm actually like the older side of Gen Z, I would say. So that's why I would be sharing about our key traits for Gen Z when it comes to online shopping, how social media influences shopping behavior, and tips on how e-commerce businesses can market to Gen Z. So next slide, please. So this is one thing that I want you all to keep in mind when marketing to Gen Z. Gen Z is not a monolithic group, and they have diverse motivations, habits, and hyperlocal market conditions. So basically, we don't want to generalize the generation like Gen Z or their culture because there are a lot of subcultures or consumer types under Gen Z. Like for instance, you have your gamers, you have people who are social activists, things like that. Like the traits that were mentioned earlier are actually all relevant to Gen Z. I can attest to that. I can validate that. But of course, there are different motivations, habits, and hyperlocal market conditions depending on the group. So we have to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So this is one thing that I think was already mentioned earlier that I also would want to reiterate is that Gen Z are empowered customers. So they're very open to new experiences and they show increasingly advanced device behaviors and digital expectations. And they can easily seek, evaluate, and share information. And earlier, I remember, I think it was Javier who mentioned that they have short attention spans. And I would have to agree with that. But I actually read another study that said that they may have short attention spans, but in some way, it's more of they can process information faster, which is why it's easier for them to, easily swipe to the next video, or, swipe to the next post or something like that. It's not just because they have short attention spans, it's because they can process it faster. They can easily find what they're looking for and just move on to the next thing. And lastly, they're also willing to take ownership of their decisions to ensure the best possible experience. So next slide, please. Now I have here the shopping funnel, which is very familiar to most of us. But if you notice, there's something different about this shopping funnel. So here we have awareness, opinion, consideration, preference, and then purchase. So why is it opinion? Why is it not interest? That's one thing that's kind of different with Gen Z. Once they're aware of something, they may have interest on it, but they'll also look at public opinion about it. Like they do their research already. They look for feedback from their peers. And next slide, please. Which is why they practice what we call aspirational browsing. Like they already hunt and look for opinions before purchasing, making decisions based on peer feedback. So maybe let's say they found like a new game or maybe a new gadget or something. Automatically, the instinct would be, let's say, to go to Reddit, to go to YouTube, to go to TikTok, to do that research, to look for opinions from KOLs, from key opinion leaders. Maybe it could be like an influencer, maybe it could be your friend, something like that. And I like how the term is aspiration is used, because with Gen Z, as you notice, or as we said, it's all about experiences. So they want this, they want to actualize, or there's this experience that they're looking for. And that's why they're browsing. That's why they're doing the research, because they want to get to that point, right? Next slide. So now let's go to the social media side of things. So I'm going to share some digital disruptors and trends, at least for social media. So this is actually from a Euromonitor report. You can actually look for the report online if you want to read the full information. They actually talk about each social media in depth. But for this, I'm just going to go run through about the key insights that I got that are at least applicable to most platforms. First is we notice, of course, or I think this is continuously evident, the social media evolution. So it has evolved from a direct electronic information exchange to a virtual gathering place. So earlier we heard the talks about community building, and that's getting stronger than ever. And just to share, it's interesting how social media evolved, because when I was around in grade school, so that's, let's say, 2007, 2008, the platforms that were trending then are like Friendster and MySpace. And where are they now, right? Like, the platforms now are very different, and it continuously changes through the years, right? So, but with evolution came fatigue as well, right? Social media has definitely grown and evolved, but there are users that are getting fatigued from content and offerings from platforms. Sometimes people would take like a social media detox, things like that, because the content can be redundant, can be repetitive, can be also too much sometimes, especially for mental health for some people. Another is video consumption. Video consumption has continuously increased thanks to emerging content formats and platforms. I think top of mind for most of us would be TikTok. And it's just insane how TikTok has evolved through the years, especially during the pandemic. Like, it really skyrocketed. And it's now not just like a dancing platform. Now there's a lot of like things that you can learn from it. Now you have TikTok Shop. And that's another thing. That's another trend. From e-commerce, we're now seeing S-commerce, the trend of S-commerce or social commerce, which provides an additional avenue to diversify your offerings. So now it's not just having your own website or being in marketplaces such as Lazada, Shopee, Zalora. Social commerce is also an avenue for income. You could have your Facebook or Instagram shops. TikTok Shop has recently launched here in the Philippines. I assume it's the same for most countries in the region. So, and even you have your lives as well. I'm not sure how lives, like TikTok lives, Facebook lives, live selling basically. I'm not sure how well it's doing in your country, but in the Philippines, it's such a huge thing. So that's one thing that we also need to watch out for. And lastly is the power of influence. I think this was mentioned earlier about how influencers are such a huge thing then, and it's still a huge thing now. But one thing that I also want us to take notice of is our micro influencers, because they're actually gaining preference over influencers with huge following, because micro influencers give an impression that they're more authentic and they have more meaningful engagement. So this was something that was mentioned earlier that we'll reiterate again, that this is really important to Gen. Next slide. So with all of this, I'm going to share with you some tips really on how you can market to Gen Z, specifically with e-commerce, but I think this is also applicable regardless if you're doing e-commerce or not. So one thing we need to keep in mind when we're doing social media marketing is that you need to understand the purpose and pitfalls of each platform, then make strategic content choices based on expectations. So what do we mean by that? Of course, each social media platform has its own thing, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Discord. Everyone's got their own, like, features, benefits. They have different types of users as well. So we really need to first really understand these platforms, understand our audience, and then make strategic content choices based on that. And that leads to my first step, or one of my most important tips, which is the power of IMC. So I mentioned I have a master's on IMC, but what is IMC? Just in case you haven't heard of it. IMC is integrated marketing communication. So basically the practice of IMC is recognizing that marketing is not just one thing. It's integrated with other practices such as advertising, public relations, events, digital marketing, so on and so forth. So it recognizes that all of these things go together. And an IMC strategy makes sure that you have the right message targeted to the right audience in the right channel. So you're recognizing that marketing is omni-channel. And then with an IMC campaign, your audience gets the same message no matter where they encounter you. So if you strategically choose, of course, which platforms you want to be in, what message you want, and of course, who your audience is, no matter where they encounter you, let's say they encounter you on TikTok, let's say they encounter you on Facebook, and so on and so forth. Regardless where they encounter you, they get the same brand experience. And that's what we want for our audiences, right? That's how they remember you. You don't want them to have a different experience on TikTok and then have a different message from Facebook, and so on and so forth. So with IMC, everything is cohesive. And no matter where you reach them, they get that same message from you. Next slide, please. So another is go with the flow. So I actually have this sometimes I think for brands can either be a trendsetter or a trend follower. So regardless of your capabilities or where you are, you should just go really with the flow or with the trend. And what do I mean by that? You need to take advantage of emerging commerce interfaces. So in terms of social media, video games, and AR, VR. So like Javier also mentioned earlier, Discord and Twitch. So those are examples of emerging commerce interfaces, basically, that we have these new engagement opportunities that lets you have an omni-channel strategy. And the advice really is you need to be fluid in these dynamic lifestyles and these changes, and continuously adapt to evolving content formats and platforms. But of course, going back to one of my slide earlier, you need to understand first, of course, these platforms, and at the same time think if it's right for you or not. Like I wouldn't recommend, like, just because, let's say, TikTok is doing well, that doesn't mean you automatically jump into it. Like I think you need to have some sort of evaluation also, whether it's the right fit for you or how you can make it work for you, right? So don't just jump into the trend, but also be strategic, right? Just what I said about IMC. Next slide, please. Another is, of course, be personal. So there is something I think marketers would see this as like a negative sort of thing on how Gen Z has no loyalty. And actually, I do agree somewhat that, but to be fair, to defend my generation, loyalty rewards are dime a dozen, but personalization efforts aren't. So I think that's the difference with Gen Z, that they can be loyal, but for them, it's a matter of personalization in a sense that you're providing exclusive experiences or unique experiences, because loyalty rewards are kind of, common, but personalization offers that differentiation that Gen Z kind of wants for themselves. So that is why, if you want to be personal, or you want to be personalize your offerings, you need to identify your DSI, because for Gen Z, the USP is irrelevant. Oh, wait, okay. So most of us are familiar with the USP, which is your unique selling proposition, right? But I'm sorry to burst anyone's bubble, but the USP is BS. It's actually completely outdated at this point, which is why I want you to consider your DSI. What is that? The DSI is your dominant selling idea. So how does this differ from the USP? Technically, they're the same thing, but with the USP, the negative or the key thing about it is unique. And sorry to burst again anyone's bubble, but nothing is unique at this time and age, which is why the DSI is a more timely term, because it recognizes that most selling ideas or selling propositions are kind of the same for most products and services with your competitors. Like, the tendency right now is that at the end of the day, we're addressing the same needs or the same wants with our competitors. Which is why with the DSI, by identifying that dominant selling idea that you think is personal or relatable to Gen Z or the audience you're targeting, and it's the dominant selling idea that your competitors aren't addressing yet, that's the way you get to be somewhat more personal and get more connect with Gen Z, because they care more about benefits and experiences that make a difference in their lifestyle. So that's also how you choose your DSI. Next slide, please. Another is, of course, this was also mentioned earlier, and I would like to reiterate it, is you need to identify your proof of purpose, or you need to have your proof of purpose. So what are the visible steps that you take as a brand to prove your values and beliefs? Because as we said earlier, as we heard earlier, Gen Z has their own advocacies. They have these causes that they care about. Like, for instance, for me personally, I advocate for mental health, for climate change, for, some political issues also in my country. So basically, we all have these own advocacies. Like, you meet another Gen Z person, they would have advocacies of their own. So, and this was also mentioned earlier. I'm gonna reiterate again. We have a strong BS radar. we really do. Like, when you come up with a campaign, we can tell whether you're being authentic or not. And basically, we talked about values, right? We talked about advocacies. And let's say this brand all of a sudden comes up with a campaign related to an advocacy, but it's not, true to themselves, true to the brand's personality. So we can tell through that BS. Top of mind example, if you guys are familiar with the Pepsi ad with Kendall Jenner, I think that negative feedback was really mostly Gen Z, because they could tell how, out of touch the campaign was, how completely BS it was. So yeah, the reminder is always to stay authentic, genuine, and relevant through your personality and values. Of course, as a brand, you set that first. And then once you set that branding, your personality and values, your proof of purpose will be reflected in the way you do business, in your marketing, in your advertising campaigns, in your products. So, of course, you need to go back to your branding and your core values. Okay, next slide, please. So lastly, I would like to reiterate also that you need to remember that everyone's an influencer and everyone has a sphere of influence. Like, I would like to remind you that, of course, you can tap influencers with huge followings, influencers that are micro influencers. That's fine, no problem. I think that's a normal marketing thing to do. But you shouldn't also forget who the product is for, which is your consumer. So they have their own spheres of influence. And as I mentioned earlier, opinion matters now to Gen Z. So they can look at that from KOLs, from big influencers, from micro influencers. They can get that from their friends as well. So at the end of the day, consider your consumer. You need to listen to them, value their opinion, and give them a great experience. And your paid influencers won't be the only ones doing the influencing for you. At the end of the day, you want your consumers to be your brand evangelists, your brand ambassadors as well. And that actually is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you so much for that insightful session, Jamie. I think you threw a couple of truth bombs there that may have thrown us off guard, and we truly appreciate all your insights. And with that, I would like to thank again all three speakers for sharing your knowledge today. There's been several perspectives that was thrown to this floor, our virtual gathering today, which are meant to help you when it comes to finding creative ways to manage and market to Gen Zs. I won't be able to summarize all the amazing truth bombs we got today, but the point is, based on these various perspectives, what are some of the key takeaways that you can take that would be relevant for the work that you're doing? Would be the biggest question that you would ask yourself today. We might be running a little bit more than our usual time, so we'll try to speed up the Q&A session. Hopefully that those that need to go, feel free, and those that who can stay on, please do stay on, and feel free to throw your questions now into the chat box. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do it, and please do address the speaker that you would like to speak to, and I will pull out your questions from the chat box. All right. We have the first question here, and I'm going to just, in the interest of time, just get to it.
So advice for marketing for non-competitive video games. So as I said before, I would just tackle on community. I think that can you hear me, guys? Yeah, right. For Jamie, sorry. Yeah, I didn't see that.
Why don't you address that question first? So, what advice
Yeah.
do you have for marketing non-competitive video games to Gen Z, to Javier?
Try to be quick. Use Discord basically, and influencers within the non-competitive video game. But I mean, Discord, you have a bunch of communities actually within other non-competitive video games. So use those two channels, because actually, I mean, there's already very engaged communities, and just as Sheramin and Jamie said, I mean, it's where you can tackle better that community. So I was just focused on those two social media. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Javier. Well said. Moving on, Jamie, how would you suggest brands to keep Gen Zs engaged if social media fatigue exists? Is there a suggested frequency to keep them engaged?
Right. Yes. Thank you for that question. That's very interesting. And I think that's a dilemma that marketers usually get, like for each platform, or, when there's a new content format, like, wait, how often do we post? When do we post? Where do we post? Things like that. And I would go back to one of my tips, that which is basically we need to consider our hyper local market conditions as well. Because for instance, here in the Philippines, if most of you are from the Philippines, I would answer like, based on my familiarity. But I would say that from your countries, it may vary as well. So I think we need to keep in mind always, like, who exactly are we targeting? Like, what kind of user or consumer type that are we targeting? And based on that consumer type, let's say, okay, how often do they go online? Or which platforms do they go online the most? Or well, then, okay, if they have social media fatigue, what do we think would be like what your question? What would be, because I as much as I'd like to answer that, I think that's a very case to case basis sort of question. It's not really apples to oranges. I would say even for the audience, as I said, there are different consumer types or subcultures in Gen Z. So for instance, for gamers, or let's say versus for someone who's into fashion, there might be some nuances, there might be some similarities, but I think as marketers, we really need to keep an eye out for that. So I hope that somewhat answers the question. I get it's kind of vague that I didn't really specify, oh, you post it this time or that time. But basically, my advice is just be really aware of that audience behavior, of that consumer behavior, because that constantly changes, especially with the continuous change of social media platforms and content formats.
Thank you, Jamie. I think you did address it. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers to it. I think what you said about getting to know the channels and the subcultures takes time. So I don't think it's, yeah, I mean, I think you did well in that answer. So thank you so much. Moving on now. We have a question here for Charmaine. I wanted to get your opinion on slow quitting because amongst Gen Zs, do you think this is happening to Southeast Asian companies too? From Risa.
This is about quiet quitting, right? Is it the same?
Slow quitting. Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Risa. Thank you for the question. I think it's definitely real, but I also feel like employers are also, you always think that, oh, Gen Z is like, oh, quiet quitting, but I also realize that employers are also aware of this happening. People are clocking out earlier, or not just about the hours, right, but also the motivation, the energy has shifted. It is happening here. It is a conversation, especially in some of the employer brands I work with. But then it goes back to, yes, quiet quitting is real, but what are the other things that you can attract or sort of motivate them or re-engage them, right? Is it the activities you do, the culture? Culture is so important to sort of address this. But yes, it is real. I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Basically, you need to figure out re-engaging
Yes.
or methods, and this requires you to basically take time to understand where the struggles are, the frustrations, and figure out where you can fill in the gap, hopefully.
True.
Yeah.
I think that one more thing I want to add is
I
communication,
agree.
right?
Validation.
Validation, communication. Like, again, trust is a two-way street. It's not just about how the employee feels, but also think about how your employer feels. That's why building a very collaborative culture, uh, having a culture that knows that you are valued and seen, you actually realize that you can actually try to curb and address this as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Charmaine, and I hope that answers your question on slow quitting. Risa, moving on now. This is a general question, so any of you speakers who want to take this can take it on. How do we market to Gen Z but not exclude other generations as well? And the context is we are opening a pizzeria. Anyone? Maybe Jamie?
Right. Okay. I think that's very interesting because that's true. Sometimes we don't want to exclude a generation. And to be fair, Gen Z is gaining purchasing power, but I would think millennial still has the most spending power because most of Gen Z, to give context also, they're either starting in the workforce, people like me and below who have recently joined the workforce, or they're either in college or they're about to graduate high school. So those are the life stages of Gen Z at the moment, right? So if you want to target other generations, I think I would look at consumer types at first in the sense that, okay, what, let's say, in terms of price point, for instance, like, okay, how much do your pizzas cost? Okay, based on that, who's most likely to buy that? Are they students? Are they working? Or, oh yeah, multi-generational? Yeah, if so, okay, what life stages? For instance, for millennials, maybe they're family people. Like maybe you want to target that like family sort of setting. Maybe you also want to target student sort of setting, things like that. I'm not very familiar with the brand, but either way, I think you would like to look at that first, consumer types, identifying what kind of consumer and then designing that accordingly because your consumer type could be more than one. Like usually when you're doing your marketing campaign, sometimes we do like 2 to 3 groups, right? So you could come up with like maybe a millennial family, like Gen Z students, things like that. So it could still work, you could still market. And of course, you could come up with a marketing plan that's kind of flexible, I would say, for these consumer types in a sense that because millennials and Gen Z technically they do have similarities. They do have some similar things that you could also address. So I think you could do that for sure. In terms of platforms, it's also entirely up to you what you want to be on. But I would suggest, since it's food, definitely you're gonna have to be on Instagram. Maybe if you want to do, I don't know, TikTok, make it more a little bit interesting and fun. There are basically there's so much we can do that could still you could do so much that could still cater to different generations. But ultimately, I would suggest when you do your planning, yeah, think about that audience first, and then think about yourself as well. Of course, not just the audience. You want to think about your brand as well, and how and which audience would resonate with that brand. And that's where you come up with a marketing strategy that addresses a multi-generational approach. I hope that makes sense. And maybe there are others who might want to jump in.
Can I jump in? I think echoing Jamie's point about brand, right? I think going back to the brand identity is so important. Don't work backwards. Don't think about where the money or revenue is from, but think about why you're starting this brand. What sort of pain point are you solving? What is different about your pizzeria as compared to another pizzeria? And really be authentic about your messaging. Think about the vibe of the brand identity, right? People actually go beyond just creating a logo, but what sort of vibe are you attracting? Is it a contemporary fun, or is it a very edgy, cool, futuristic vibe? So when you actually sort of do the conceptualization, ideation, and actually your ultimate goal is to build a meaningful brand, right? That has you can build connections with your consumers, and actually this will attract the right people. So going back to your purpose, mission, I harp on that a lot, because I realize a lot of brands just think about what the consumers want, but think about why you started this in the first place and what sets you apart, and that mission that you're trying to do. You want to be the best pizzeria in town serving vegan, think about that and why you're doing that, because you want sustainability. So a lot of the mission is very important, and this will actually attract the right consumers. You don't have to worry if it's generation or not, but you just want the right consumers supporting your business in the right way.
Thank you so much, Charmaine. That's double advice to you, Aina and Mark, for your question. One, solidify your brand personality, and two, create your customer prototypes and then take it from there. Thank you both so much. We actually have one more question before we wrap this sesh up. It's from Bilal. How to win Gen Z loyalty in our competitive hotel industry? And I guess since it's not addressed to anyone specifically, feel free to any speaker who would like to address this question.
Let me answer this question. I'm actually, been working in the hospitality industry for quite a while. So there's actually different trends within the market. Number one, it's customization. Right now, thanks to technology, while hotel chains before, the idea was you need to have like the a completely standardized experience all over the world. When you go to a Radisson Blu, when you go to a Hilton, when you go to a Marriott, in every part of the world, you just go. You want to have the same experience and to ensure that experience in the other part of the world. Right now, customization gets more relevance, and technology can allow that. Then something that we were seeing when I was working in Radisson, that wasn't long ago. That was working with them like three months ago. You need to and that's regarding to brands. Hotel chains, as you can see, they are launching new. When you launch a brand that that attract to the Gen Z, I wouldn't say that you should focus on only Gen Z. Number one, because right now, as we know, they don't have power spending. So it's not strategic. It doesn't really make sense for the moment. And that's something that a lot of brands try to do. Hotel chains try to do when they wanted to target the millennials at the beginning. And instead of focusing on one specific generation, just focus on the mindset, because baby boomers that have, that are more modern, and they have also the mindset of Gen Zers, and that's something that Radisson did with Radisson Red, or that maybe Mary did with Aloft, with Canopy. Well, W, it's kind of, I mean, it's just it's lifestyle, you know. Then I mean, what else? I mean, there's many. I mean, the thing with hospitality at the end, it's that well, let me just go 1 second. How to win Gen Z loyalty. Then I mean, another key thing now is to get into the beliefs and value, and something that is a big trend within the hotel industry is actually the responsible business. At the end, when you have a hotel, there's several ways that you can target to have a zero, I mean, zero carbon emissions, a safe waters, and that's a huge trend. Look at the WTO. There's like I mean, in the last 5 years, the hotel industry has actually I mean, some chains were actually trying to get responsible business as something that was a competitive advantage against other chains. That's not anymore the case. The industry is putting together to actually do because I mean, to take care of the planet, it shouldn't be something that is a competitive advantage. That's something that the industry should get together and have some objectives. And that's something that the World Travel Tourism did in Manila, actually about 1 year ago or 6 months ago. So and that's a huge trend, right? I mean, that's something that you should highlight, that you are joining that, because that's something very relevant for Gen Z. And you should just join it.
Thank you, Javier. I think that was super insightful, and I hope Bilal has taken a couple of nugget advice from that. Um, we were actually going to wrap up, but we have 2 more questions. And do the speakers need to go? Because if we need to go, then we'll just wrap this up. How's everyone?
Good so far from my end.
I'm okay as well.
All right, cool. So let's get to the last 2 questions. And then no more, guys. Last one. Hi, Jamia. I'm in the midst of launching my own luxury scented candle brand. How do I build a cult with my brand? What metrics should I monitor when targeting and acquiring Gen Z customers? From Amrit.
Okay. Hi, Amrit. That's a very interesting question. So I'm actually gonna answer it based on like the work I do as a brand strategist, or what I would do. Of course, branding is the first thing. I like what Charmaine said earlier, and I do agree 100%. So you need to think of your branding first, your identity, your purpose, your values, your tone of voice, like what kind of, and then that's when your kind of audience kind of kicks in, like who are the luxury scented candle buyers that you want to target. I think there's a couple of audiences for this market. So of course, first the branding, and once you've established that identity, and then that's when the marketing follows through. And then in terms of metrics, you need to monitor when targeting and acquiring Gen Z. I think ultimately it also depends on the platform that you choose, or where you want to start marketing. But I think it's usually pretty consistent across the board, whether you do Facebook marketing, Instagram, TikTok, Google, wherever it is. Usually you look at, of course, your CPC, your cost per click, let's say your conversion rates. I think that's something pretty consistent no matter where you go. So but I think key metric would be, of course, the cost of acquisition, and whether you're actually, earning rather than spending, at least in a marketing strategy sort of way, like your cost per clicks or your conversion rate. You want to make sure that all makes sense based on how much you're spending. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. Oh yeah, and how do you build a cult? That's a matter of community building. Of course, you're gonna have to have your community building and engagement efforts. So with community management, I think that's key. Again, identifying the right platforms you want to do that in. Like, let's say this is luxury scented candle brand. Maybe that could be, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest, top of mind at least. And then You just have your community building strategies on those platforms. At least that's my train of thought so far, right? Okay, top of mind. But ultimately, it depends on your brand and your marketing strategy. So I hope that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. That was very insightful, and I hope that helped you, Amrit. Nabila, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to skip your question, but I know who you are, and we're gonna have a one-on-one session on this question for sure. Okay, so with that, I just want to thank everyone for staying on, and I also would like to apologize that we're a little bit off with timing. I believe that everyone, well, I hope that everyone found value in today's session. And I would like to get you to do us the biggest favor and to take a quick poll for our closing. And so you might see a pop up screen right now, and I would like for you to answer the questions before we wrap up this really quick session. You should see it on your screen right now. Thank you so much. Give you got a couple more seconds. I'm glad to know everyone learned something new. And for those who still don't feel confident, don't worry, the community is here for you. And yeah, that's it. I think the rest of us are okay. Any more? Thank you so much. All right. So, as we come to an end, I would really just like to take a moment to thank all our speakers for providing us with super profound information and knowledge today. I knew this was going to be amazing, and it is amazing. So, thank you so much. And of course, to all our attendees who made time to join us virtually, I truly appreciate your presence. And I would like for all of you to just quickly switch on your cameras and let's get a quick virtual photo sesh. I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to switch it on, and let's just do a screenshot and then carry on with our Friday evening. I promise we'll be better with timing for our next events. Are we ready? Nina? All right, let's take a photo. Wait, I haven't seen Regina, Aziz, Richard. Lovely. All right, are we good? Okay, let's just do it. 3, 2, 1. Did we snap it? Nina? One more? All right, we got it. Thank you so much, everyone, for switching on your cameras. With that, we have come to an end of our union today. We truly hope that you found value in today's conversations, and more importantly, that you learned something new. Our hope is that you will take this knowledge and inspiration and pass it on to the next person, be it at work or at home. And you never know that it might help support someone else in their journey. So what happens now? Our community is here for you. There's many ways to get connected to us, and we'll basically be reaching out to you via email and tell you more about our community offerings. So if you feel a calling to contribute and whether or not you want to partner with us, do more events as what you've experienced today, please do let us know, because we're always open to collaborate with others if you resonate with our values. And that's that. Thank you so much for being here today, and to our speakers. I'm blown away by the insights that you have shared. And if you're following us on Instagram and all that sham, at Karma Marketing _ and yeah, look out for your inbox to hear more from us. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good Friday. See you.